that the light didn't die. Light one candle for the pain they endured when their right to exist was denied. Light one candle for the terrible sacrifice justice and freedom demand. But light one candle for the wisdom to know when the peacemaker's time is at hand. Don't let the light go out, it lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through our love and our tears. Light one candle for the strength that we need to never become our own foe. Light one candle for those who are suffering, pain we learned so long ago. Light one candle for all we believe in, that anger won't tear us apart. And light one candle to bring us together when peace has the song in our heart. Don't let the light go out, it lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through our love and our tears. What is the memory that's valued so highly? We keep it alive in that flame. What's the commitment to those who have died when we cry out they've not died in vain? Have we come this far always believing that justice would somehow prevail? This is the burden and this is the promise, and this is why we will not fail. Don't let the light go out, it lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through our love and our tears.
Good morning. This morning we begin as our opening words with the three blessings recited on the first night of Hanukkah. I'll read each to you in Hebrew and then share the translation. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadnik ner shel Hanukkah. Praised are you, O God, ruler of the universe, who made us holy through your commandments and commanded us to kindle the Hanukkah lights. The second blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa nisim la'avotenu bayamim hahem bazam haseh. Praised are you, our God, ruler of the universe, who performed wondrous deeds for our ancestors in those ancient days and at this season. The third blessing, which happens on the first night of Hanukkah only. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehekianu v'kimianu v'higianu lahazmin hazeh. Praised are you, our God, ruler of the universe, who has given us life and sustained us and enabled us to reach this season. And now together, we will light the first lights of Hanukkah. So you use the center candle. This is my menorah. And you start from the outside and you work your way in. Happy Hanukkah, all. Please join me in the recitation of our shared covenant. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth and love, and to help one another.
Ashlosha, Ashlosha, Divarim Ha'olam Kayam. Ashlosha, Ashlosha, Divarim Ha'olam Kayam. Ashlosha, Ashlosha, Divarim Ha'olam Kayam. Ashlosha, Ashlosha, Divarim Ha'olam
So I begin today with the story of Hanukkah, which began on the evening of the 10th. And I want to tell you a little bit about it because I know not all of you know the story of Hanukkah. And I begin with a rather extended quote from our UUA president, the Reverend Susan Frederick Gray. Long ago, in the 2nd century BCE, over 2,200 years ago, Israel and Jerusalem had been taken over by Syrian occupiers. The Syrian Empire was ruled by Antiochus Epiphanes, and they were expanding their empire. In doing so, they worked hard in trying to wipe out other cultures and other religions. In Israel, they tried to completely wipe it free of Judaism. All those who did not give up the practice of their faith for the religion and philosophy of the Syrian Greek culture instead, and that included worshiping the political rulers as gods. Those individuals were beaten and lost their lives. And the center of Jewish worship had been until that point the temple in Jerusalem. So when the Syrians took over Jerusalem, they took over the temple and they destroyed the ritual objects and used the altar for their own worship. And there were, of course, people that resisted this takeover. And in particular, there was a priestly leader, Matthias, who refused to perform the Syrian rituals and stood up to the occupiers. With his son Judah and 4 other sons, they led a group of freedom fighters known as the Maccabees, who fought a 3-year war against the Syrians. They were incredibly outnumbered, but the Maccabees nonetheless ultimately recaptured Jerusalem, liberated the temple, and drove the Syrians from all of ancient Israel. When the Maccabees had retaken Jerusalem, they demolished the Syrian altar inside their sacred temple and they built a new one. They took away all what they considered defiled objects and they replaced them. And once the temple was clean and ready, they decided to rededicate it with an 8-day celebration, what we now know as Hanukkah. So in the process of restoring the temple, the priests found that a small quantity of consecrated, of holy oil, had not been polluted. But it was only enough to last for a single day. They could make more oil, but it would take a week before it was ready, and they had fought so hard to reclaim that temple and to be able to practice their religion freely that they didn't want to wait. And so reluctantly, they went ahead and they lit the oil lamps in the temple for the first day's worship, knowing that they'd only have enough for a single day. Miraculously, on the second day, the priest went to check the oil lamps, and as you know, they found that the oil was still burning. And this kept on being the case all the way through the 8-day celebration against all rational odds. This is the story of Hanukkah, most frequently told. And this is the one that a lot of us know. And if I ended right here, it would be true. But it wouldn't be accessible, just as I'm guessing my opening prayers were not. It wouldn't be accessible to a lot of the Unitarian Universalists here, particularly those not of Jewish heritage, or those for whom the notion of miracles is not necessarily a relatable one. It's asking for a leap to some sort of externalized divinity, maybe that bearded God in the sky. And I know that for many of you, and for me, that's not our understanding. So I want to tell you a little more about the Hanukkah story and what I'd call the very human side of miracle making, a notion that maybe more of us can relate to. We're told that those 8 days happened because of the freedom fighters, because of those that fought for the freedom of religion. And they themselves were part of a much longer Jewish heritage of resisting oppression, of struggling for freedom. And this story, of course, it isn't just about the plight of the Jews. It's a relatable tale of the many who have struggled and do struggle against those who would persecute them for their very existence. And fortunately, the human heart is stronger than that. In community, whether that community is freedom fighters or a congregation such as ours, freedom is sometimes very suddenly within one's grasp. With Hanukkah, the miracle to me is that the persistence was enough to remove the oppressors and for the Jews to be able to reclaim their own religious practices. But this isn't really a miracle, or if it is, it's a very human-made one. Judeo-Christian sculpture, weirdly, they have 3 kinds of miracles. 1, God performs a miracle without human interaction. 2, humans perform a miracle without God's interaction. Or 3, humans and God work together. So if we're to acknowledge this miracle of Hanukkah, I think we'd, at a minimum, honor the strength of the movement, of the effort made to achieve freedom, while also leaving room for wonder. Think about any social movement that you've learned about or been part of. The end of slavery, the suffrage movement, the fight for civil rights, the fight for women's rights, marriage equality, you name it. You'll find the same pattern. People work for years, tirelessly, and often unnoticed to create these systemic changes. Eventually, the strength of their collective power creates shift and change in the larger world. And then often those who haven't been part of the fight or more at the margins of that struggle, perhaps, they look at this massive shift and they think, wow, what a miracle. A miracle, perhaps, in terms of the strength and the dedication of individuals and communities working for change, but not a miracle from on high. Some miracles, maybe not the 8 days of light, 8 nights of light, but many miracles can be traced very much back to human actions. I've been thinking lately about a older but well-known book, Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point. And the core of the book is asking, how does big change suddenly happen? He concludes that what is perceived as dramatic shift is actually the accumulation of many small moments adding up until you get to the point of a tipping point. And interestingly, this is more of a side note here. Gladwell studied pandemics, of all things, to understand the tipping point, the moment in an epidemic when the virus reaches critical mass and begins to spread at a much higher rate. So this idea is a compelling one right now to think about for obvious reasons. But what happens next here in our little state of Rhode Island, it depends on the actions of us, of those we love, and of those we share this small state with. Our actions are inextricably woven into that larger whole, moving us ever closer or further away from that tipping point. My point is this. We humans, we create and co-create our outcomes in both the most mundane and the most critical of times. And that's the core of Hanukkah. It reminds us of both our power and our endurance, that even when all seems lost, or at least remarkably skewed against survival, we are not without options, not without means to create change. Change that benefits the whole, whether that whole is the congregation, the community, the state, or well beyond. Hanukkah reminds us too that if we keep faith, miracles can happen. People are freed, pandemics end, hope is restored. That's the promise of this season and this faith, that what we work for will be manifested, and that change beyond our wildest dreams remains still ever so possible. May we be renewed by our faith, and may it lead us ever closer to creating the miracles that we dream of. Blessed be.
We would be one, as now we join in singing our hymn of love, to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other, to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
close today with the offering of a reconsidered prayer, that opening prayer rewritten by someone other than myself, in consideration of modern times, of what those Hanukkah prayers might mean for us right now. A prayer affirming our role and not God's role alone in attaining those things that we call miracles. And this is the prayer. I'll read it twice. Blessed is every hero, every sage, every enlightened person, and all the people who have given us light, sustained us, and brought us to this day. And again, blessed is every hero, every sage, every enlightened person, and all the people who have given us life, sustained us, and brought us to this day. Please join us for our closing song.
Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again.